are aware, it is connecting now. So as of right now, we're going to begin to record. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you have the ability, if you go to gallery view, upper right will control whether you see speaker view or gallery view. If you want to mute yourself or unmute yourself, you can see that if you roll over, you'll see everybody has their little microphones. Please do mute yourself.
This is Anna, may I help you?
If we can mute, there's in the lower left-hand corner of the Zoom window, there is a microphone where you can mute. Please mute if you can, unless you're going to be asking a question or speaking. So that's a really important one, because otherwise we'll just get people overriding, as is happening now. So again, if you don't do that, the hosts, co-hosts have the ability to go in and mute you, and hopefully they'll do that. Okay, so we want to get going here. We have, first of all, let me share my screen here and we'll get going. So you should be seeing the agenda now, and we're here at the California Cyanobacteria Harmful Algal Bloom Network. We're going to do a little bit of welcomes, introductions, announcements, and then we will we'll get into the updates, various updates that we've got planned. So why don't we start with the welcomes and introductions. Do we want to go ahead and find out who is on the phone here? Would probably be the best thing to do. So Joseph, could you actually walk through the list of participants and just let people introduce themselves for a couple seconds? And I will stop sharing here for right now. Joseph, are you on?
This is Becky. If one of us wants to read through, because I've been trying to go through and mute people that weren't already mute, so we don't get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, Dave, were you wanting me to unmute or just read through them?
Well, if you can unmute as you read through them, then okay, people will at least be able to say who is on, who they are.
Okay. So let's see. So I'm Joe Westhouse. I am from DWQ, State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Water Quality. Next on the list would be Dave here.
And I'm Dave Karen. I'm from the University of Southern Cal and one of the co-hosts and one of the co-directors.
This is Marissa Van Dyke. I think I'm next on the list. I'm from the State Water Board and also the Freshwater Harmful Algal Bloom co-lead at the agency. Good morning. I believe next is Becky.
I think I skipped myself. This is Sarah Ryan with Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians and one of the CCHAB co-chairs. Thank you.
Becky Stanton, Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, one of the CCHAB co-chairs.
You guys have any involvement in harmful algal blooms? You guys just scared. I'm on a conference call for the State Water Resources Control Board. That's just like a Zoom meeting that I thought was interesting. It's going on right now. I just curious.
Can we move on?
I'm Andy Gorders with Fish and Wildlife in Fresno.
This is Keith Bouma-Gregson with the State Water Boards in Sacramento.
Josh Westfall, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Josh Westfall. I'm with the LA County Sanitation Districts.
Thank you. Next one is Agordis, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, it's Andy Gordis with Fish and Wildlife in Fresno.
All right. Next is Eric.
Eric Kringelberg with the Freshwater Trust here in Sacramento.
Great. Next is A. Cordy.
Anna Corti from the City of Pittsburgh Water Treatment Plant.
Thank you. Next, Adolfo Felix. Okay, we'll move on. Asha is next.
Hi, this is Asha Kryling with the State Water Resources Control Board Office of Legislative Affairs, and I cover HABs in my legislative portfolio. Thanks.
Welcome, thank you. Next is Carrie Nagoda.
Hi, it's Carrie Nagoda with the San Diego Water.
All right, thank you. I think you cut yourself off a little bit. You're at the San Diego Regional Water Board. Next is Carrie Austin.
Good morning, this is Carrie Austin with the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board, and I'm also chair of the Subcommittee on Mitigation. Hi, everybody.
Thank you. Next is Christine Job. You're probably muted, Christine. All right, maybe she stepped away for a moment. Next is Chuck. Chuck, would you like to introduce yourself? Okay, we'll move on. Dylan Stern.
Hi, this is Dylan Stern with the Delta Stewardship Council's Delta Science Program.
Thank you. Next is Emily Duncan.
Hi, this is Emily Duncan. I'm with the Los Angeles Water Board.
Thank you. Next, G. Herbin. Okay, perhaps that didn't work out. There's next on the list is GT for short. Not sure who that is. If you would like to.
My name is Greg Turner. I'm with San Juan Water District.
All right, thank you. Next up on the list, Hal McLean. You are muted currently.
Hi, Hal McLean, East Bay Regional Park District. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Heather Boyd. You are muted.
Hi, this is Heather Boyd from the Santa Ana Regional Water Board.
Thanks. Next up is James Downing. You are muted.
Hi, James Downing. I'm with the Santa Clara Valley Water District in San Jose.
Thank you. Next is Jayme Smith with SCWRP. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jayme Smith. I'm from SCWRP, and I am the harmful algal bloom thematic lead at SCWRP.
All right. Sorry, the list just got a little bit messed up right now. See here. Next up, I believe, is Jennifer LeBay.
Good morning. This is Jennifer LeBay with the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board.
Thank you. Next is Josh Westfall. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you want to unmute. All right, we'll move on. Catherine, you are muted, but you can introduce yourself. Okay, next is Kevin Van Patten. You can introduce yourself.
Yes, hi, this is Kevin Van Patten with the City of Turlock Environmental Compliance. I don't have any involvement specific to this topic, but I found it interesting.
All right, well, welcome. Next is Chrissy Mackey of DWR. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. Chrissy Mackey, Department of Water Resources in the Orville Field Division. I do all the cyanobacteria monitoring on Lake Orville and surrounding water bodies.
Welcome. Next on list is Christy Taylor.
Hi, this is Crystal Taylor of the State Water Board Emergency Management Program. Tuning in to find out what's going on with you guys, and it's interesting.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Let's see here. I believe the next one is Lauren Robinson.
Hi, this is Lauren Robinson. I'm calling from Orange County Healthcare Agency. Thank you.
Welcome. Next up is Melissa Daughtry.
Hi, this is Melissa from the Campus Water Board.
Welcome. Next up is Nick Martorano.
Hi, this is Nick Martorano from the Water Quality Monitoring Council.
Thanks. Next up is Ross Cooper.
Hi, this is Ross Cooper. I'm a current California Sea Grant Fellow placed with the State Water Resources Control Board.
Welcome. Sarah Rice.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Yeah, I'm Sarah Rice. I'm with the State Water Board in the Emergency Management Program and mostly hanging out to learn stuff and situational awareness. Thanks.
Next up is Shannon Murphy.
Hi, this is Shannon Murphy with the Weedhawk. I work with Becky Stanton on HABs.
All right, welcome. Susan Fricke.
Hi, this is Susan Fricke. I'm the Water Quality Program Manager with the Crew Tribe on the Mid-Klamath River.
Welcome. Next, Susan Keidel.
Hi, this is Sue Keidel. I'm with US EPA Region 9.
Thanks, Sue. Next is Violet Rennick.
Hi, my name is Violet Rennick. I'm with the Orange County Education District.
Okay, next, Yiping Kao. You're muted if you'd like to introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, this is Yiping Cao. I'm from the Santa Ana Regional Board.
Welcome. Bill Taylor. All right, Carola Kennedy. You're muted. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you have to unmute. All right,
Did
Rich
that work?
Fadness. Oh yes, we can hear you.
I got it. Sorry
Carola.
about that. Carola Kennedy with Kennedy Environmental. I do the cyanotoxin monitoring with the drinking water purveyors on Clear Lake.
Okay, thank you. Rich Fadness.
Mm-hmm.
You might be muted. Okay, next, Susan Fluharty. Looks like you're muted if you'd like to introduce yourself. All right, I believe we got to the bottom of the list of those that have come into the meeting. I'll pass it back to Dave Karen.
Thank you for that assist, Marissa. One thing that is annoying about Zoom is that it keeps sort of shuffling the participant list. Is there anyone else who has not spoken who would like to unmute and introduce themselves?
Hi, yeah, this is Victor. I'm sorry, Victor Ventura with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power.
And this is Barbara Berry with the Santa Ana Water Board.
Bill Taylor. It's volunteer.
Okay, thank you. All right, we should probably move on then. Again, you should be seeing my screen, I believe. If you are not, please let me know. We should be seeing the agenda up there. Just to let people know that the March meeting notes are up. They have been given or shown up on the website. You can take a look at those. We have an update from one of the water quality monitoring boards. Can you guys see my screen? If somebody could just
It's really small. Your slide is minimized if you want to make it larger.
Okay, let me just see if I can get rid of this. How's that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So the Water Quality Monitoring Council meeting, they had a big meeting on July 1st. I'm not going to go over too many of the details. They're listed here if you want to see them. Nick explained that it is really the culmination of about 2 years of work. They have a strategic plan summary that they are working on, sort of what does WQMC do? What is it? What does it do? They're working on a dynamic tool set, a service and project portfolio, asset inventory, communication plan. They then talked for some time about the MPA team work plan that they're working on. And one of the things that I wanted to call out here is they are trying to coordinate with the Delta Stewardship Council Science Action Agenda, which, according to their own words, is created to advance the state's co-equal goals for the Delta: more reliable statewide water supply and a healthy and protected ecosystem achieved in a manner that protects and enhances the unique characteristics of the Delta as an evolving place. Nick, the director of WQMC, noted that HABs should probably play a role, and Dylan Stern is going to be the contact for this. They essentially want feedback to go into their work plan. I think Dylan is on the phone, or he's on the line, and I believe they need comments by July 17th. Dylan, if you are here, if you are online, why don't you jump on and say a couple of words about that, if you would.
Yeah, really quickly. Thank you so much for giving me a few seconds here. I'm hoping I can direct this group to our website, which is scienceactionagenda.deltacouncil.ca.gov. You might have also seen a listserv come out from the Water Monitoring Council. Basically, we are updating the science action agenda for the next 4 years for high priority science actions to inform management needs in the Delta. And the purpose is to identify emerging science actions that address gaps and support knowledge advancement. And we are beginning with management questions this time. So I think the idea is to solicit management questions from collaborative venues like this one. I thought we had a really great conversation with the Water Monitoring Council last week, and they recommended that we engage with you guys directly. And I've been going to these meetings, and I think they're really great. And so we do have a survey available on our website to give us feedback. And we will be holding a public workshop to transparently refine the top management questions. That will be September 29th, 2020. And I guess just throwing out to this group, you know, if you guys have a list of management questions that are ready to go, and I can also work with, you know, Becky and Keith offline to develop a list, but we definitely like to get HABs in the science action agenda because it's essential topic for the Delta. So yeah, any questions, feel free to email me, and I look forward to working with you guys. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Dylan. And I think now, Marissa, you're going to share your screen and give us a little update on changes to the web portal.
That's right, Dave. So to check that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right, wonderful. So this is Marissa Van Dyke again with the State Water Board and the Freshwater Harmful Algal Bloom Program. We manage the California HABs portal, and the portal that CCHAB subcommittees contribute to with their products. I just want to provide a brief update, a pretty short one, on the updates to the portal that were done in May. So this was in between from our last quarterly meeting. So you may have read about these updates and seen them yourselves. This was distributed on the libraries list, but I'm just going to go over it briefly. So on the portal, we organized some of the existing information to present a little bit more clearly and help folks that are new to the subject find it a little more easily. And we also posted all of the benthic cyanobacteria posting guidance that was adopted at the last CCHAB meeting as well. So I'm just going to walk you through some of the updates. First off, the landing page of the HABs portal is what you're seeing here. The right-hand panel has been reorganized. The same toolbox as was requested many years ago is still there with the frequently needed tools. Then we reorganized all the resources. We've separated out the resources that are primarily for the audience of the public to help them to protect themselves, their family, dogs, and livestock. A couple notable new additions there are the frequently asked questions for HAB signs. So this is a web page that goes over all the different signage that has been produced from CCHAB, including the advisories that we're well aware of, and also the benthic cyanobacteria or toxic algal mat signs, and also the general awareness signs. There's also the new webpage that was developed to present the toxic algal mats FAQs. This is again just going over kind of an introduction to the material to educate folks if they're going to be using the advisory signs, and then they can go to the benthic posting guidance page to go through this in more detail. So this benthic mats posting guidelines, this is more for the response agencies. And this webpage that I'm showing you is more for the public. The human health impacts page, this is one of the many pages that's been around for a couple of years, along with the dogs, livestock, fish and wildlife. Human health impacts has a couple notable updates. We have now 2 new fact sheets that have been posted. One's for medical professionals from the Department of Public Health. Also a new fact sheet regarding illnesses in California and how they are tracked. We also made a direct link here to the illness tracking in California page that goes over that information in detail and provides a summary of the illnesses that have been reported to the CDC in the past couple of years. And then on to the next section is our resources for response agencies. So we separated out, a lot more of the technical guidance here. We have a direct link to our state agency contacts. And then we also separated out a general resources page to just have a clear link to monitoring information and laboratory analysis. And also the HAB-related programs and organizations have been separated out so that there's a clear link to them as well. And we made a significant update to the signs and guidance for posting page. This is the CCHAB guidance that's been developed over the years. We reorganized the information and also presented some additional information on how we are currently responding to blooms, the state interagency task force, and how we collaborate with all the response agencies to work on responding to a bloom. So there's quite a bit of material on this page. We have a table of contents here, so you can go into the response plan, which is a step-by-step kind of process of how we do response. And then it goes over a little bit more about the coordination, gives you state agency contacts, and we separated out the posting guidance for planktonic HAB. So this is the guidance that we've had since 2016 at CCHAB, and also separated out a section for the benthic cyanobacteria or toxic algal mat posting guidelines that was adopted at the last meeting. And then the previously provided information of HAB outreach and communication was all collated under one section, particularly the information for public notifications and press communication that was on a separate webpage previously. So we brought that all together along with the existing resources for the general public and medical professionals. And just wanted to also highlight, most folks ask, where's the general kind of informational tool to get folks first educated about HABs. You can go to the frequently asked questions page, and we have an updated printable HABs fact sheet as well. And this is how it works. And you can share that broadly with the public. All right, and that concludes my update. And if you have any questions about it, perhaps I can address that at the subcommittee updates, because I know we're getting a little behind on schedule. I'll transfer this back to Dave.
Okay, thank you. And we do have, if anybody has any burning questions, or wants to make any announcements, please unmute and do that now. Okay, not hearing any. I think we'll move right on, and we're going to go to Jayme Smith. Jayme, whoops, I'm not sure how that jumped to the end, but it did. Jayme, if you want to unmute yourself, and Jamie's going to give us a little update on the FHABs program.
Yep,
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, so I am pleased to be able to provide an update for the FHAB's strategy team, which includes myself, Keith Bouma-Gregson, Marissa Van Dyke, Ali Dunn, and Martha Zatula. So if you could go to the next slide. So just a reminder, because it's been a little while, that what we're trying to accomplish here. So the outputs of the initial phase of the strategy development are going to include a monitoring framework, which we're working on drafting currently. And this will be kind of a high-level document that will help prioritize ambient monitoring efforts. We also will develop, and again, we're writing this right now as well, a list of special studies that would be needed. So any specific targeted studies to fill information gaps that are identified in the monitoring framework would be kind of listed in an appendix. And then the third is an implementation guidance document. And so this is meant to be something that's very pragmatic, that a manager could pick up and start to do some ambient monitoring in their water body. So if you go to the next slide.
Oops.
So hopefully this looks familiar. This is the framework that was proposed in the 2016 support strategy. And so this document that is forthcoming is working to integrate these different approaches for ambient monitoring, starting with state programs, which would include incident response, as well as state-led field monitoring, voluntary or partner-led monitoring, so monitoring where the state could collaborate with partner groups to conduct monitoring, and then satellite and remote sensing tools. So using all of these various approaches to address FHABs. And I have a little animation there. So we've been working on drafting all three of these elements since the last CCHABs meeting. At the very last meeting, we went over in detail what the working group output was from the satellite remote sensing work group and what the products that would show up in the report were. So you could do the next slide. All right, so as I've mentioned a couple of times, we're working on writing this. So for those of you that are newer, how we went about developing and moving into the writing stage for this strategy document is that we assembled a technical advisory group that was then broken into 3 working groups that were focused on these 3 elements that are identified in the 2016 document. So state-led monitoring and event response, voluntary or partner monitoring, and satellite and remote sensing tools. And so we went through our core management questions related to addressing status and trends and drivers on FHAB impacts on core water body beneficial uses, and had very thoughtful conversations with our working groups about how you would take these approaches to address these information needs. And now what we're doing is drafting chapters related to these sections. So we have a chapter that we're developing that outlines all the different approaches that were discussed by our working groups, and then a chapter focusing on how to take these approaches and address and go about ambient monitoring to address status and trends, and similarly how to use the 3 different kind of approaches of ambient monitoring to address environmental drivers. So if you could go to the next slide. And so we've done a lot of that writing. Right now we're really working on putting the strategy into the strategy document, if you will. So there were lots of different approaches of how to conduct ambient monitoring to fill various information needs. And so being strategic, we recognize that not all approaches are appropriate for all management questions and beneficial uses. So we've had extended conversations about prioritizing certain elements to address which the priority beneficial uses and questions that are needed to fill our more immediate needs. And then we've talked about these things on kind of 3 time scales. So immediate implementation, so things that should go, we would finish the document and that we would be making the recommendation that these things go into effect as soon as possible or are started in development as soon as possible. Near-term implementation, which is what we're calling a 2 to 5 year time frame, and then long-term, which is kind of on a 5+ year planning horizon. And while we have in the strategy, while we haven't identified exact resource allocation, we've kind of put these things into relative high or low resource categories. And so we've been making recommendations kind of based on this matrix of options. And so if you go to the next slide. So again, we're really working hard on drafting this, and we're hoping to get a draft out to our advisory groups. We have a technical advisory group and a stakeholder advisory group that will be reviewing the final document. We will, ask for them to provide reviews, and assuming that these are, reasonable, we would hope to address the reviews within, a month or so of getting them, and that the strategy will be approved and released late fall 2020. Okay, next slide. So the other thing that I updated this group on last time was kind of a side project of the FHAB strategy, which is developing a distribution list for FHAB advisory signs. And so when we met at the last meeting, we were in the process of revising the designs and getting them produced. So since then, we have had the sign design approved. You can see them in the right-hand corner here, where we have them showing both Spanish and English. So these are the final signs. They now exist and are in a warehouse at the Water Board. We had a application that went out via the California listserv, and we were able to send signs to 47 people or groups that had, 46 that had applied for these signs. We did ask a couple of questions because it's helpful to kind of understand what people's experience with signs and HABs are. And so I thought it'd be interesting for the group, since these are CC-HAB signs, to see what some of the responses were. So if you could go to the next slide. So based from the 47 46, we asked, what is your experience with FHABs in your water body or water bodies that you manage? And so I think it's very telling that, majority have experienced chronic HABs for more than 2 years or for the last 1 to 2 years. This is probably as you might expect. And then the next highest category is, first observed FHAB or a suspected FHAB within the last season at 13%. If you go to the next slide. We also asked, have you used signage? We got a variety of answers, but the majority have used CC-HAB signage levels or signage before. And then the next category is no, we haven't used signage before. So I thought that would be interesting that, majority of the applicants have used some form of CC-HAB signage in the past. And lastly, if you could go to the next slide, we asked about barriers to using signage. And so majority of the respondents did not indicate that they have experienced a significant barrier to use, but then you can see, the majority have experienced some sort of barrier, and then the largest the 28% is that they have not. So there's a variety of different barriers, the largest being, a little bit of uncertainty about what type of signage to use. So hopefully Marissa just showed some great frequently asked question type stuff on the new website. So hopefully that will help with that. Also things related to affordability of printing signage and a variety of other kind of responses. So next slide. So there are quite a number of signs left, and so Keith Bouma-Gregson would love if you're interested in receiving these signs. They are 18 inches by 24 inches in a rectangular format. They're on PVC, so they're meant to last for several seasons. And if you're interested in obtaining some of these signs, please go ahead and give him an email. And with that, that's the rest of the update. I'd love to take any questions.
Okay, if people have a question or two, please unmute yourself and ask.
Cool.
Any questions? Okay, then maybe what we should do is move on to the next talk. The next talk is going to be by Becky Stanton, an update on the ITRC, and we'll put her up here.
Great, thanks. Good morning, everyone. Again, this is Becky Stanton with Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. For those of you that were at the Water Quality Data Symposium, this is the same talk, but we can focus a little bit differently for that since this audience is more familiar with it. And I want to acknowledge this is an interstate group, and I'm really privileged to be able to work with people from different states, including Brian Reese, my co-lead for the risk communication and response subgroup. Angela Chembo and Ben Holcomb are our two leads of the overall harmful cyanobacteria bloom team. And then Sherry Basinger is our fearless program advisor for ITRC. Next slide, please. So if you aren't aware, ITRC is Interstate Technology and Regulatory Council. They're a state-led coalition that also incorporates industry partners and stakeholders. They are providing innovative environmental technology and appropriate approaches and focused on technical knowledge and informing state and federal regulatory decision-making for human health and the environment. And they have an extensive webpage with a link there. And so you can develop team proposals, and they go through and help fund and support teams that evolve over time. And so the harmful cyanobacterial team began in 2019, has both state, federal, and again, industry and agency partners. And then there's this overall HCB team, and then they have specific subgroups that are topic derived. And so we have a monitoring group, communication response, in-lake management, nutrient reduction, and now we're working on training. And so there's a public team page with the link there as well. Next slide, please. And so, you know, we're 2 years in or starting our second year. What are we working on? And so by next year, we plan to have a web-based guidance document that goes over a lot of detail on overview of what are cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins, some information on monitoring, depending on what your purpose is and what your objectives are, what's an appropriate method to use. Communication response planning. So if you have a bloom, how do you help communicate to the public? How do you work with other agencies? How do you go through the response? Then it's split for management control strategies. So if you have an existing bloom, what might you do in your lake or other water body type, as well as how you might do nutrient reduction to help prevent blooms from happening in the future, and then some overall recommendations. Next slide, please. And so one of the things that we'll also have is some interactive online tools, including just overall content navigation, but then also some selection tools for monitoring methods based on several criteria, in lake management, and then nutrient reduction strategy. And I want to credit the graphic was inspired by the Healthy Watersheds portal graphic, so I was able to share that, and people like that, and so they modified that to help talk about other sources of nutrients. So credit for that. And then we'll have a section on training with some, I think they're using modules as the overall sections, and then some kind of like shorter quote unquote teaser videos for the different topics as we work through. Next slide, please.
Becky, if I can just interrupt, please, if you're on a phone, mute your phone. We're getting quite a bit of background noise. Thank you.
And so we currently have a draft of that document available for external review. If you're interested, we've got another little bit more than a week for review. And so if you email me, I can provide the link to download that. It's not something we're just generally posting because we want to do version control for the ultimate final version. But and I can also send you, we have a comment spreadsheet that we want people to use because it just makes it so much easier to organize all the comments we receive and respond to them and address them. So again, email me and we can give that. And again, you have about a week left to comment, and we're happy to get it. If you really want to focus on one section or another, that's fine. We'll certainly appreciate overall review as well. But if you feel like you only have time to do it, part of it, that's fine too. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, it's on the team page or the contacts for the team leads, our program advisor, myself again, there's my email, and Brian Reese is another one of our co-leads. And so, yeah, any questions in general?
Please unmute yourself if you have a question. Having heard no questions or no one unmuting, I think we'll move on to the next update. This is going to be by Sarah Ryan. Sarah, you can take over the screen on HAB communication and coordination during an event, sampling signage and press release on Clear Lake.
I think so. Are you seeing the main screen? Hold on. Good morning. This is Sarah Ryan. Can you hear me and see the first screen, the title screen?
We can.
Oh, perfect. I'm just trying to get it to the slideshow rather than seeing all of the other components. I guess I'll just do it like that. All right. Good morning. This is Sarah Ryan. I'm the Deputy Tribal Administrator and Environmental Director for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians in Lake County, California. We're on the shores of Clear Lake, which is a natural, the largest natural freshwater body in the state of California. And I'm hoping, excuse me, let me go back. I'm hoping that I'm being joined by a couple other people within Lake County who are part of the multi-jurisdictional approach that we have in Lake County for HABs that are occurring on Clear Lake itself. I believe I saw Angela on there, Corolla Kennedy. Please feel free to join in, you guys, when during any of these slides. So just a few pictures of Clear Lake. There are many uses of this beautiful water body, and I've had we've done presentations in CCHAB before, but it's important to note that there's a lot of listed beneficial uses in terms of how people respond to this water and use this water. We just got some accolades for being one of the best bass lakes in the country, maybe the best right now. We also have tribal traditional uses that occur. There's lots of just recreation, swimming, jet skiing. I know I don't have pictures on there because I really like these tribal pictures, but there are aquatic plants that are consumed and used in the from the lake. There's also drinking water. About 60% of the county gets their drinking water from Clear Lake, from about 17 public water systems, and then also some private systems and state smalls that are on the lake. So it's important to note that in terms of why we respond the way that we do. So Clear Lake, what you're seeing on this slide is the monitoring locations that we have currently for for our cyanotoxin monitoring program, and we update the colors of the markers based on the toxin levels. Blue is a current site that we we didn't sample that particular sampling event. And then we have sites, we've developed these sites over the last 7 years. We're 7 years into this program. And we added some tribal sites and also sampling during some specific tribal events to make sure, or prior to make sure that we're getting results to them prior to them using it for ceremonial uses. And ultimately, the communication of the toxin levels on the lake is the most important part of our program. So just briefly, we've had a continually developing program. Our program was formed by the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians and Elam Indian Colony in 2014 after seeing several years of blooms that were lake-wide, that were very concerning. There were really no toxin levels that were being released to the public. And so the tribes decided after a sampling event that we had around Labor Day weekend in 2014, decided to move forward with an ongoing proactive cyanotoxin monitoring program. So we formed a task force on the lake. We started sampling at a few different sites for microcystin, and started using Abraxas algal toxin strips just to determine the toxin levels and in-house, but also sent off to a lab. We updated it to 18 sites in 2015, started doing cyanobacteria cell identification, and also sent off for analysis of other toxins, cyanotoxins. In 2016, Elam Indian Colony's staff started monitoring for toxins in the drinking water systems with an Abraxas manual, ELISA equipment, and has and Corolla Kennedy from who started at Elam Indian Colony, now is with Kennedy Environmental, continues to do the monitoring cyanotoxins in drinking water systems that are participating, and we'll go into that in a moment. We started also looking at chlorophyll A and phycocyanin for because there is a nutrient TMDL on Clear Lake, and also started analyzing for microcystin at every site. In 2017, we added other water bodies in the county as needed. We normally don't just respond and do toxin analysis on with every single site that has a problem, but we've added Blue Lakes, which is in Clear Lake, to our monitoring plan, and because they're an alternate lake for people to go to on Clear Lake when there's a bloom throughout the lake. So we have that additional water body that we always monitor. We started doing qPCR analysis for toxin producing genes because we found that provided some additional information about the type of cyanobacteria we have on the lake and whether they happen to have the toxin producing gene. In 2018, we also added analysis of fish and shellfish for microcystin with a Cali PA Environmental Justice Grant. Began collaborating with another agency, California Department of Water Resources, to get water from their samples, from their sampling sites, which is in the interior of the lake. And then our data, after working with the county for several years, our data was then linked to a QR code on a signs that are placed throughout the county shoreline. So, and I have another slide on this, but there's also our URL for Big Valley Rancheria for our toxin levels. Our updated toxin levels is also listed on that sign. And then finally in 2019, we started doing a little bit more work on tribal beneficial uses and how a freshwater HAB event could be impacting tribal members as they're in there doing traditional uses. So we wanted to do a graphic that showed that there was a lot of different ways that people could be inhaling or ingesting or getting dermal exposure from some of their activities. So as I mentioned earlier, there is a multi-jurisdictional response when there is a HAB event. And I will go into each of these just briefly, but again, if Angela or Amy or Carola would like to join in on any of these discussions, please do. So there is a task force and also a messaging group that meets regularly in the Clear Lake watershed. The task force is the Clear Lake Cyanobacteria Task Force that the tribes formed, which also has regional and state and federal folks. The messaging group is more of a local group, and those discussions are about communication about cyanobacteria, so we're all on the same page. We've also looked at the cyanotoxin decision tree that is on the CCHAB or is on the My Water Quality portal regarding how to, about test and communicate and signage placing. So we have our own internal kind of updated decision tree regarding the Clear Lake, and it is based on the type of monitoring that we do on Clear Lake, which is the use of qPCR as well as the Abraxas field strips, and we've found kind of a good medium or of being able to make some decisions on that. Our multi-jurisdictional response also includes how we post and when we post, and that's something that is we're in the midst of that right now. We just finished we got some results from the July 4th weekend or right before the July 4th weekend, and had to update signs and press releases. In terms of communicating this, we do have a Facebook page that the tribe has and the county has. There's websites that we update and press releases that are put out by County Public Health. There's also a drinking water response. So every other week, the drinking water, the public water systems that are participating in the drinking water toxin testing are being tested by Kennedy Environmental. And so there's alternating weeks throughout the whole summer. So that information is critical because they have our toxin levels from the week before when they go out and get the drinking water samples. And we're also seeing what their toxin levels are at the intakes, which are a few hundred feet out. And that's information that helps us when we do our recreational sampling. There's also sampling response when there are fish kills, when there's public or agency reports about blooms. We are also out there responding, getting samples if needed, looking at it under the microscope, and this is also multi-jurisdictional. So might be the county that's picking up the water samples, the tribe that's looking at the cell ID, and then decisions are being made about whether to send off for analysis. And there's also signage that's placed based on the toxin levels. So this is, I mentioned the Clear Lake Cyanobacteria Task Force. So this is the group that meets about 3 times a year, 2 to 3 times a year at this point. It's been together since 2014, looking at and discussing Clear Lake cyanobacteria issues. There's state and local and regional folks on that one. And then this is also the Clear Lake Cyanobacteria messaging group that the county put together, which includes various agencies with the county, the tribes that are part of this program, and the 2 cities. So there is, here's an example of the signage that has been placed on Clear Lake at multiple sites, heavy recreational sites. And as you can see, well, in this you can't see it, but there are the trigger signs are added based on the toxin levels. And these are quite large signs. I believe they're 2 feet by 3 feet. Angela might be able to update that or give a correct size of that. Maybe it's 3 by 4. It's quite large though, and they're placed in locations where the sampling locations are or heavy recreation. There's also a kiosk. I got this picture from Angela. This is, it has other information about nuisance aquatic weeds and quagga mussels, but as you can see, there's some information about harmful algal blooms in there. And these are multiple places around the lake. Angela, I pulled this from your information, and maybe you can jump on at this point. Angela is with the County Water Resources and takes a lot of calls on what's going on with the lake. So maybe, Angela, you can jump in. Yeah, just unmute your phone. I hear a dog, but nothing else.
I'm pretty sure that's not Angela.
Okay.
Could people please remember to mute your phones if you're on your phone? Thank you. We can't mute you from here.
Can you guys hear me? This is Angela.
Oh, yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Sarah, for pulling that up. So, yeah, I tally my phone calls because I get a lot of calls from the public, and I try to figure out, you know, what people are calling about, what they're interested in, and if people are coming up to visit, or they're looking for property, or they know they're going to have family that comes in to visit the lake and do some activities. The first thing that they think of is I'll call the county and try to get out some information. And I try to have a positive, I want there to be a real person there that can talk to them and answer all their questions, particularly because rumors are abound, and we try to have a consistent message. So the information's out there. And thanks, Sarah, for putting this up. And one thing I'll notice, so the total cyanobacteria calls we had for this last year, since last August, July of this year, I had 58 phone calls coming into me about cyanobacteria issues in total. And at this time last year, it was about 30 or so. So for this part of the year, you know, we're only halfway through the summer, and part of that year didn't count because the lake was closed because of COVID. So to me, what that's showing is we're getting these increased numbers of calls. So the outreach efforts by the partnership between the tribes and the counties and other organizations are really having an impact, and people are getting the word out that, oh, there's something going on, I should call and get information about this. And to me, that's what that's saying. So I'm going to keep tracking this information. If anybody has any ideas for better ways to do that or how to do it, I've just been putting it in a spreadsheet and then having this. And thanks, Sarah, for bringing that up. I will say that I try to separate the cyanobacteria calls or the algae related calls for visitors and residents. Sometimes their information is the information they're looking for is a little different. And some of the residents tend to have some base of knowledge of, they know something's going on, they've seen it for years, or they haven't seen it for years, or this year's been different. And so they're just kind of clarifying some information, and they're trying to figure out what they can tell their families or people that are visiting, or, you know, if they have dogs, they're trying to get a little more clarifying information versus visitors just hear that Clear Lake, there's an algae bloom and is it safe? And they have basically that baseline of knowledge in it. But I really appreciate and I thank them for calling and wanting to get more information. And I will say that we did have a Facebook post that we had before we had one of our larger bloom events. We were going to have a press release, and it was on June 25th that I released it out of Lake County Water Resource Department page. And it was basically kind of talking about, you know, there's going to be some blooms coming up lake-wide, and then some background about, you know, the difference between green algae, cyanobacteria, and what people need to know to make the best decisions. And that post did get about 14,000 views, which is really good for our county. So that's about 24% of our county. And this was just a post that wasn't a boost, so we didn't pay to have it go out or anything. I put some pretty pictures in there, and well as the, you know, the pictures of showing blooms. And then I also put some of our informative pictures of the brochures that we worked on. I'm sure Sarah will show here in a minute. So I'm going to put that post in the chat at Zoom. If anybody wants to look at it, what we did there, and just the reach was really good. I thought for that kind of post. Is that good, Sarah? That's a lot.
Yeah, that is great. And I agree with you on the reach of the communication that we do about cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins. We've noticed that with our Clear Lake Water Quality Facebook page is, you know, especially when there are blooms, we'll have, you know, tens of thousands of people, of views, basically, of reach, actually, is what it is. And it's amazing because we have a small county, and I think it's just because all of us have been communicating with the public for a while, and you know, they know that they can go to County Water Resources or the Clear Lake Water Quality Facebook page and you know, and get good information so they know what to do next. So yeah, jump in whenever you want. Okay, so next slide. Sorry, here's the next slide. Is actually kind of on that topic. This is from a few years ago, but you can see from the Clear Lake Water Quality Facebook page, which we run, that we put information about the what we're seeing, whether via microscopy or the site conditions. We post the signs that are appropriate for the trigger level, and just additional information. And it usually has a good reach. This is 3 years ago. We're probably double that in reach on a regular post at this point. But as Angela explained, you know, there's a lot of interest and concern, and people really appreciate the transparency. Here is a recent press release and a map from our most recent sampling event, June 23rd, 2020, and you can see that we've colored the icons, the markers with the toxin levels, and the county press release on the right-hand side, where they will post some good information, not only about some good things about the lake so people don't get scared, but also just documenting the last sampling event and how to find out more information. They always link my water quality, you know, state information in there, as well as our local pages. So I just want to move quickly into the drinking water. So not only has our group come up, or not only does our group do drinking water toxin monitoring, but we've also come up with some outreach to the public, because we know that there are an unknown number of state small water systems and private water systems on the lake that are pulling the water from the lake. So we are concerned enough that over time, with help from Amy Little and others from the State Water Resources Control Board Drinking Water Division, that we were able to come up with some good information for the public. It's a 2-page thing. I'm sorry, I only posted the first page on here. I apologize, but it gives some information for these small drinking water systems and how people can stay safe. So I apologize that I lost the second page of it. Amy, do you have any comments on this particular? I noticed you're online on this particular pamphlet that's now going out.
Just want to add that it was an incredible collaborative process between multiple agencies and groups, and a special thank you to Angela and Sarah. Both of you guys have been tremendous through this process, and just really appreciate the collaboration.
Thank you. And Angela, it looks like you're posting the link to that. Hopefully that's on the county's page. And I apologize, the second page is really helpful too, because it shows small water system owners, private, you know, houses that they have, that there's some things that they can do to be watching out for water quality issues. We've also drafted.
Hey, Sarah?
Yes.
Sorry. So the drinking water brochure, we are working with the county media and environmental health, where we're starting that conversation to try to, we want to do a press release just for this, to get the word out for this tool, but also to try to get information on small drinking water systems, locations, and questions. So part of this was kind of like a, it's not only just to provide the information for those that might have small systems, not just on Clear Lake, but on some of the streams or other water sources in the county, but to also try to get that feedback and acknowledgement of where those systems are, and how people are using, you know, surface water. So that's in the works right now.
Thank you. And yes, great point that there's an unknown number, and the more outreach to the public about the, you know, potential risks, the better, because you know, there's a lot of, Clear Lake was you know, a lot of resorts about 50, 75 years ago, and a lot of people moved up with little cabins, and that's why they're still on these small drinking water systems that can't treat and filter out toxin or cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins very well. So we've also created this is a draft page of nutrient management outreach, because we wanted to let the public know about things that they could do to improve the water quality in Clear Lake. So this is still a draft, but this is being worked on by the regional board. It's something that Christine Joab, who I think is on the call, helped spearhead. And we're working on it within our messaging group, plus a few more people. So it's kind of the holistic picture of, yes, we've got some water quality issues, but there's also some things that we can do about it. Our drinking water systems, this is a map of drinking water systems on Clear Lake, surface water, public water systems, excuse me. And some of this is actually an older map, but about 9 of these locations are participating in the voluntary cyanotoxin drinking water testing. And if Corolla is present, she can definitely say something. I'll just keep going unless she wants to jump in. So this is a table that she creates after each of the tests that she does. July 1st, if you can, it's a little bit small on the screen, I apologize. You can see that she tests both the raw water at their intake as well as the finished water after it's moved through the entire treatment process. And we had some higher levels of cyanotoxins on the lake during this time in the raw water, and also, of course, at the recreational sites on the shoreline. And you can see in the finished water that all but one had a no detect. So they were able to remove the any toxins, which is great. And this is something that they actually, some of them put into their consumer confidence report at the end of the year. Again, this is just voluntary monitoring, but it's something that gives confidence to many of their customers, as well as yeah, it's just part of our collaborative approach. So we're really proud about that. So in summary, we have communication about the blooms amongst various agencies and governments. We're trying to tackle it from all angles, including just environmental education for the public, and then response in terms of blooms, signage, press releases, drinking water monitoring, and recreational monitoring. We make decisions. Of course, the public health officer, when it comes to cyanotoxins, a public health officer is who makes the final decision about things that we need to do and posting. But Dr. Gary Pace is, who of course is very busy with COVID-related issues, is also very present and involved in all of our discussions. And it's about communication and about transparency. So thank you very much for participating, Angela and Amy, and thank you to our whole group for being a part of this collaboration. And here's my contact info. Are there any questions?
Sarah, this is Amy. I just wanted to, I had a question and a comment.
Yes.
Yeah, the comment is, as of yesterday, I just learned that there's a new fluorometer on the upper arm, and I'm trying to get more details on that, but I'm very excited. I'm hopeful that, we have some data outputs that we can broadcast somehow. But my question was for Corolla, if she's out there. There was the greater than 5 for the raw water at 2 sites. I was wondering if you talked about dilutions, and I was just wondering if you were able to get to those or not. If not, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Sorry, Becky.
Are you out there, Corolla? I'll reach out to her at a future time. Thanks, guys.
Are there other questions?
Hold on, let me.
Is that better? Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I on the raw water for Konocti and Highlands, they both were over 5 parts per billion, which was where my standards cut off at. And where I didn't dilute, I couldn't give the full value. But next week, I will take their raw waters and dilute them down along with just a 100% sample, so I can kind of judge and see where it goes. But yeah, those two came up on the curve, the curve that I use, the R-squared curve, and they came up at a 40 and a 14. But once again, like I said, that was just for the standards of 0 through 5. So I yeah, didn't extrapolate it out and didn't dilute it. So.
Okay, we're running a little bit late, but not too bad. We're about 10 minutes over. We're supposed to have a break now for 15 minutes. Why don't we split the difference on that and let's come back at 10:20. Okay, so we'll resume at 10:20. We have a couple more updates. And Sarah, if you could unshare your screen. And we'll see everybody at 10:20.
Thank you. I'll unshare.
Okay, so I'd like to welcome everyone back. Hopefully we're all here. And I think our next presentation, we're about ready to go here. Keith, are you online?
Yes, can you hear me, Dave?
I can hear you.
Wonderful.
And you should be able to see your slides.
Yep, I can see them.
Okay, then take it away. Keith is going to give us a couple of updates, first on satellite observations, and then he will be speaking for Greg Gearheart on the Internet of Water project. Take it away.
Yes, thanks, Dave, and thank you, everybody. Good morning. So my name is Keith Bouma-Gregson, and I work for the Water Boards in Sacramento and co-lead the freshwater HABs program along with Marissa Van Dyke. And yeah, this first item, we'll be talking about the satellite imagery. So you can go to the next slide, Dave. So we know, many of you are well aware that there's temporal and spatial variation within blooms, which can make sampling quite difficult. You know, it's a lot of effort to get field crews out there, and then you're kind of tasked with thinking about where you want to be collecting your samples. And then, you know, you collect your samples one day and you know that, you know, conditions might have changed and wind might have pushed the bloom around, and now things are slightly different. And so satellite imagery therefore is useful because these blooms are observable from space. And so you can get these large scale snapshots of bloom conditions covering a large spatial area. And you can have pretty rapid turnaround. The data can be available the next day, whereas sometimes it can take several days for a laboratory to get results back to you. But one of the key questions then is, well, how can the cyanobacteria be distinguished from other algae and other you know, constituents in the water that are not cyanobacteria? And so next slide, Dave. So to answer that question, we need to take a trip to the dark side of the blue and talk about light and cyanobacteria. And so Dave, you can go to the next slide. And so the key to answering this question is chlorophyll A. And so chlorophyll A is the molecule that's central to photosynthesis and the ability to take sunlight and turn it into sugars. And chlorophyll A fluoresces at these red wavelengths. And so you can see in the top images, it's a beaker of chlorophyll A in solution. And then when you shine a particular wavelength of light on it, the chlorophyll A will then re-emit that light in the red wavelength spectra, which is about 680 nanometers. And you go next slide. And so it turns out that there's a differential fluorescence between cyanobacteria and other types of algae, and that the cyanobacteria fluoresce a lot less than other algae. And that's kind of for three reasons. The first is that the way that the chlorophyll A molecules are organized within cyanobacterial cells is different than other algae, so that results in less fluorescence. Also, the high density of blooms can cause that fluoresced light to just be reabsorbed by the bloom. It never actually makes it out of the water. And then also there can be a lot of scattering of that light because the cyanobacterial cells are very small, and many of them have these gas-filled aerotopes, which cause the light to scatter further. And so about over 10 years ago, some remote sensing scientists kind of wanted to take advantage of this differential fluorescence to see if they could develop some algorithms to distinguish cyanobacteria from other algae using satellite imagery. And so you can go to the next slide, Dave. And so what they developed was this index called the Cyanobacterial Index, which was first proposed in this paper by Wynn et al. In 2008. And Tim Wynn is a NOAA scientist. And so what it's kind of the first caveat and thing to remember is that all these satellite imagery are only able to look at cyanobacterial abundance in the top of the water column, usually about like 1 Secchi depth. And so the denser the bloom, the less light can penetrate into the water, and sort of the shallower the estimate is. And so that being said, what they did was they looked at the shape of the spectra at these particular wavelengths. And so in this figure on the left, it's the nanometers of light on the x-axis. And then on the y-axis is the amount of light being reflected back into space where the satellite is picking it up. And so the way the algorithm works is you can see that on the right figure where you take these two reflectances at 665 nanometers and 709 nanometers. And this is all in the range where the chlorophyll A molecule is absorbing and reflecting back light. And so once you have those 2 points established, you draw a straight line. And if your value at 681 nanometers is below that line, that means that you have less fluorescence than you would expect. And that means that you're sort of predicting that it's cyanobacteria are present in that bloom, because if it was algae, they would be fluorescing a lot of light back at that 681 nanometer wavelength, and you'd see a higher light intensity being picked up by the satellite. And so when that point is lower than expected, that's basically means that the satellite is predicting cyanobacteria. And the lower down that point goes, the denser the bloom is. And so that's basically like the fundamental of the algorithm and how the satellites are using, or how the imagery from the satellite is getting processed to estimate cyanobacteria. There's a couple more complications and refinements, but I wanted to provide this little background to folks because I think sometimes a satellite can feel like a bit of a black box. And so I hope that this might help give folks a little better grasp of what, how the data is used and generated. So next slide. So now going over to the satellite tool then, so we can take that algorithm and these data are basically processed nationwide by NOAA. And then we have been working with the San Francisco Estuary Institute, particularly Randy Turner has been there, the main staff person there working with us. And so SFEI has taken that data from NOAA, done some additional processing and built a web interface and data management platform so that we can get a sense of what blooms look like in California. And there's the website there. So next slide. And so basically the satellite tool, the pixels are 300 meters by 300 meters, which means that limits us to larger water bodies. And so we have about 250 water bodies that are picked up by the satellite. And the pixel location is always the same. So it's great for tracking the same locations over time and seeing how bloom intensity is changing. The satellite, which is the Sentinel-3 series, has a 2 to 3 day return time. So you can often get multiple measurements within a week. However, I'll mention this later, if it's cloudy that particular day or the angle of the sun creates some glints, then you may not actually get a valid reading for a particular pixel. And so then what's displayed on the map are what are called these 10-day maximum CI values. So it's basically looking back at all the imagery over the previous 10 days and extracting the maximum value for each pixel and then presenting that on the map as a heat map. So the brighter red pixels indicate a denser bloom. So it's preventing a very conservative and protective image of kind of the worst case conditions in that water body over the previous 10 days. Okay, and next slide. So there are some limitations to satellite data. As I just mentioned, clouds and glare can prevent measurements on a particular day. They don't measure toxins, so all you're getting is an estimate of the cellular density and the cellular abundance, and we can't connect that to an actual toxicity measurement. We're limited to large water bodies and also no shorelines because we have to exclude all the pixels that include both water and land because the algorithm would break with those pixels. And then of course, there's also some false positives and false negatives, that other constituents and aspects of water quality might fool that algorithm and basically produce a false positive or negative. And so for those reasons, in the water boards and at the regional boards, we consider all these data provisional and we don't post any advisories directly off of any satellite data, but we do use it as a screening tool for water body assessment and to prioritize where we should be sending field crews or who we should be calling to get an update on water quality conditions so that we can, if conditions are looking bad or look like they might get bad, we can get out, get samples and kind of get ahead of the bloom before it gets too severe. So next slide. And so to help get a better grasp of the generation of false positives and false negatives, we've also been involved in some field verification work. You can go to the next slide. And so this is basically an attempt to ground truth the satellite data. And so we're collecting field measurements from a boat, which we can then compare with the satellite data. And so we visit water bodies on the same day that the satellite flies over, and we're collecting water samples for chlorophyll A. as well as hyperspectral radiometry data. And that's what you can see in the photo there. That's what I'm doing in that moment. That's basically a handheld version of the same type of sensor that the satellite has. So we can calculate our own cyanobacterial index value from the field and then compare that with the satellite data. And so last summer, this really kicked off in earnest. And so we were able to visit 4 different water bodies for a total of 6 sampling events. We went to Clear Lake 3 times, as well as Lake San Antonio, Lake Almanor, and San Pablo Reservoir. And next slide. And so this is the type of data that we're trying to generate. So here on the x-axis is the satellite data, the cyanobacterial index, and on the y-axis is the field data. And then the dashed line is the one-to-one relationship. And so if the field and the satellite data corresponded perfectly, then every point would be on that dashed line. And so I'm doing some like statistical regressions and analyses of these data. And so for now, I'll kind of leave it to each of you to decide if you think this is an encouraging relationship or if you think that the correlation isn't quite tight enough to your liking. We'll kind of be having more of a robust analysis forthcoming once we get some more sampling points. But this is basically a snapshot of the types of trends and relationships we'll be looking for in the data. Okay, next slide. Another thing is we have a bit of a collaboration with UC Davis with Dr. Alex Forrest Lab and his graduate student Samantha Sharp, who was also interested in the satellite data. And so this they were collecting data on Clear Lake last year. And it's pretty cool because they had underwater autonomous vehicles, so basically like underwater torpedoes that they could put on different sensors as well as some drones. And so they this image in the right here shows the dashed lines are the Sentinel-3 satellite pixels, and then that white line shows the tracking of the underwater autonomous vehicle as it was sampling for chlorophyll A through the pixels. And then the bright fluorescent are all the pixels collected by a drone that was also flying over. And so what Samantha's trying to do is get a sense of the spatial variation in within each pixel to kind of compare how well the pixel is doing and like averaging over the finer scale spatial variation. So that's been a fun work with them as well. Okay, and next slide. And so this is my last slide. So sort of the next steps, we're always encouraging folks to check out the satellite tool. And if you're connected to a larger water body or know people whose water body shows up on the tool, we hope it's useful for you. We'd definitely love to hear feedback and experience with us. We are doing more field verification sampling planned in 2020. Our plans have been a bit derailed so far with COVID, but trying to get out to collect more data points. As Jayme mentioned earlier, in the FHAB's monitoring strategy with SCWRP, there is a substantial portions of that are dedicated to remote sensing. And so we're looking forward to having some pretty clear and concrete recommendations for how to better incorporate satellite imagery into our FHAB's program and monitoring and water quality policy. And then additionally, the SFEI contract was renewed and is beginning again here in this fiscal year, which just started on July 1st. And one of the priority tasks with that is to enhance the web interface and data accessibility. And so right now you can download the data, but it's in only a few formats are available. And there's not that many querying options. So we want to enhance the ease of access of this data so that it's, the public, researchers, managers can better grab the data and analyze it for their needs. And that's it. And the next slide is thank you and questions.
Great, thanks, Keith. If people have questions of Keith, please unmute and ask them. Any questions on this?
Yeah, I was curious, is there like the pros and cons of just very quickly of using chlorophyll A versus phycocyanin for remote sensing for cyanide? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so one of the reasons that chlorophyll is used is because it has a stronger fluorescent signal. Phycocyanin doesn't fluoresce as strongly, and so it's harder for the satellite. You need more of that phycocyan in there for it to be detected by the satellites. And Rick Stumpf, who's a NOAA scientist, has a nice review paper in 2016 that talks about chlorophyll and phycocyan and why kind of that group of researchers has gone with chlorophyll. But so yeah, there's that fluorescence component, and then they also comment as well that in terms of one of the things too is in terms of ground truthing, phycocyanin methods are less well established for in the field, and so it also is harder to sort of take the satellite data and compare it to field data because there's a little more variety in the methods. Chlorophyll A's got a few more established procedures, and so those are at least two of the kind of rationales that come to mind right now. But if you send me an email, I can send you that Rick Stumpf paper because it's a really nice overview on algorithms and remote sensing for HABs.
Other questions?
Hey, Keith, really quickly, this is Dylan. I was just curious how often the satellite data is available. Sorry if you already covered that.
Oh, no, yeah. So the satellite flyover is usually every 2 to 3 days. And then SFEI runs the data processing overnight. So pretty much every day, by each morning, it has grabbed all the updated imagery from the NOAA servers and pushed it to the website.
Thank you. And that's in place for long term?
Yeah, you can, the time series goes back many, many years. And so you can download a long time series, exactly.
But I mean, it's secured for the future is what I'm asking.
Oh, secured for the future.
Yeah.
I would, offhand, I don't remember what is in the contract in terms of the full
no worries. I was
archival
just
policy,
curious.
but yeah, so I couldn't speak to that right now offhand, but like I mentioned, that the kind of data management and accessibility is one of the things we want to be working with SFEI on in the fall, and so we may have more updates and considerations on that aspect here in the next few months.
Very cool. Thank you, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I have a question for Keith. This is Sarah.
Go for it.
Hey, Keith. Hello. What do you think about the, or what kind of collaboration is going on with the federal Cyan app?
Yeah, so I've so some of the Cyan scientists were involved in the technical advisory committee for the FHAB's monitoring strategy that Jayme referred to. So we actually have kind of increased our communication and connections with some of those researchers over this last year. And some of the NOAA scientists also involved with that have been kind of advising myself. They've shared with us some of their processing programs and things. But we are beyond that. We're kind of staying abreast with what Cyan is doing and aware of kind of their goals and collaborations through the public webinars they have. But there's not an explicit collaboration in terms of like this data collection more than helping to advise and interpret our results and things like that.
Do you know if they're doing ground truthing in California water bodies?
I'm not aware of all of their different activities, so no, I'm not. I could follow up with them. I know different. They're not necessarily informing us of some of their activities. If they are doing anything here, I'm not aware of it currently. So it's a good reminder. I could shoot them an email and see if they have any plans.
Okay, we should probably move on. Did somebody else have something? No? Okay. Keith, I think you're up again.
I know. I'm
standing in for Greg Gearheart. Yeah, it's a twofer. All right. So now we'll get an update on Internet of Water.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yes. So, yeah, Greg may or may not be on, but and as well as maybe some other Internet of Water folks. But I was kind of tasked with helping to provide this update due to other scheduling issues folks had. So you've heard now, I think over the last few meetings, this collaboration with Internet of Water and thinking about FHAB's data management. So we'll give me an update with that. So you can go to the next slide, Dave. So the objective was for the Internet of Water, and this was a collaboration that kind of happened with Greg and Internet of Water, was to have Internet of Water help California improve our ability to integrate non-state data. So you know, tribal governments, NGOs, to be able to ingest that data and bring it into an FHAB's management system that could then be used to inform you know, agency response, notifications to the public, et cetera. And so a steering committee was created this spring with the Internet of Water, as well as another nonprofit called the Chesapeake Commons. And then we had members from the state and regional water quality control boards and the Water Quality Monitoring Council. You can go to the next slide. And so one of the reasons that we have, this is challenging is this kind of is a slide some of you may have seen of showing what our event response coordination looks like. And so in the top, currently with our data, we get these reports submitted to the HABs hotline. And on the left there, a lot of those reports come from the public. So any member of the public can let us know if they see something suspicious. But we've also now, over the years, built up some partnerships with different monitoring programs. So groups who are out there proactively monitoring will keep us aware of their results so that we can keep the map and like the database populated with those updates. But the database really wasn't designed for those types of monitoring programs. So we've sort of had to like, it's sort of been like, you know, jamming a square peg through a round hole. We've sort of had to like massage it, and it's a little bit clunky. And then you can see once it's in the data, there's a lot of other entities that then we're communicating with and connecting with across multiple scales of like government organization. And so we are wanting to be able to better incorporate some of this like partnership data from other entities. So that's the goal and kind of the rationale for that need. Okay, next slide. And so once the steering committee was created, there was outreach to a number of stakeholders to try and get a team together to get feedback on people's needs. So tribal governments were involved, the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians, Sarah Ryan has participated in this, as well as Karuk Tribe, Susan Fricke. And then we had some other community science groups, Restore the Delta, Watershed Project, SAVE, and the League to Save Lake Tahoe. And so the goal, well, actually, next slide here. Yeah, so the goal then was to do a bunch of engagement. So the Internet of Water and the Commons really led this effort with a webinar where the needs and values of kind of HABs related data and the project was defined. The Internet of Water and then put together a survey to ask these different stakeholder groups how they're collecting data, how they're storing and managing data, and data sharing to get a better sense of the types of data that would need to be ingested by a state-based system. We then had another webinar to discuss the results of the survey and kind of brainstorm some ideas and get more feedback on what data flow and data management would look like. And that then turned into a document with a series of recommendations for what a data management strategy might look like. And we are currently now in kind of this final steps area. We've gotten feedback from the different stakeholders, and those recommendations are being finalized, and the document will be out this summer. So next slide. And so this is a model that was put together by Anna Holder and OEMA in our office. And so to highlight like some of the two needs that we have within the database system. So one is we, in addition to be able to improve the response efficiency and data archival. So on the left there, you can see we kind of get these phone calls and emails coming in, and we want to have a better set of a better workflow to be able to capture field results and lab results and bloom results in a way that we don't really have right now. And so the Internet of Water is helping us with this aspect. And then the next slide. And then this here is kind of like the key goal of Internet of Water and Chesapeake Commons is to be able to include this more diverse monitoring data. So this is, you can see that on the left, we're thinking of satellite data, the non-state data, tribal data, volunteer community group data. How can we make sure that data from these types of entities is able to be ingested into our state generated workflow, so that we can be collecting information from multiple types of entities, because we know that the state can't be everywhere at once with the amount of water bodies and conditions that we have in the state. Okay, next slide. So some of the challenges that have kind of come up in these conversations is quality assurance, quality control. Is how do you handle that as you're ingesting different data from different entities of different quality, whether that be photographs or lab results or field results. And so that is there's recommendations for that in the report that will come out. And then also compliance and local support, as many of you are aware of. There are a few regulatory mandates connected to HABs. A lot of the work and response work is very voluntary on the parts of agencies as well as private entities. And so, once you have the data, how do you kind of work through that complicating landscape if you're working with groups who are less responsive to acting on the data that's coming in? Okay, next slide. And so on this, for Internet of Water, this is wrapping up phase 1, which was to develop this recommendations document. And then phase 2, which they're actively seeking support for, will then to be funding continued effort for them to work with OEMA to actually develop the database itself and code it up and actually get the infrastructure created to sort of follow through with these recommendations. And so they will have more updates with us in the coming months as they continue to attempt to secure funding for that. And the next slide. And so that's the end of that update. And so I have a few other key contact folks and the other entities involved with this Internet of Water. Ashley Ward's been the main person, Chesapeake Commons, Aaron Hoffman, and then in the water boards, it's been myself and Anna working on this with under Greg's leadership. So with that, I can take any questions. And if there is anybody else from this project on the call, and if there's time for any additional comments, we could welcome those too.
Hey Keith, it's Peter Colohan from the Internet of Water.
Oh, thanks Peter. Hi.
Please chime in. Did you have something to say?
Nope, I'm just here to answer questions if there are any.
Okay.
Great job, Keith. You did a great job.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so Peter's executive director. Am I getting your title right?
That's right.
Peter
Yeah.
okay, great. Yeah, of the Internet of Water.
I'm confident Keith knows a lot more about this than I do, but I'm here to do what I can now. Ashley is on leave this week, so otherwise she'd be here with us. But I've decided to fill in.
So
and along that same vein, Keith, this is Anna Holder, and I'm here as well.
So we have question answerers if anyone has a question. Anyone? Okay, well, thank you for that, Keith.
Can I just make one more comment, Dave?
Please do.
Just to connect this back to Jayme's update earlier, we're pretty excited. Like the work that has been done on this really parallels the larger FHAB strategy with SCWRP, and so it's neat to be having these two strategic documents will be coming out this year. I think it's going to help provide our program with a great roadmap forward at kind of different levels. So a big thanks to the Internet of Water and Chesapeake Commons for their work on this. It's been really great working with folks, and feel free to follow up with any of us over email if you have further questions. So thanks everybody.
Great, thanks for that. Okay, I think we're going to move on now to regional HAB coordinator updates and subcommittee updates. So we'll do this a little bit differently. I've pulled up, as you can see, the map of California from the website, which indicates some of these. I always have a difficult time really zeroing in where each of these places might be on the map sometimes because we have so many regions. But we'll walk through these, and if anybody wants to have me point out specific places, I'm happy to do that. So why don't we start with the regional HAB coordinator updates. And we'll just march through them from 1 through 9. Do we have somebody from Region 1? Remember, please unmute in order to have yourself heard. Do we have someone from Region 1 on the line?
Well, this is Susan Fricky, and I'm with the Creek Tribe on the Klamath. Was there somebody from the regional office?
Rich was on. I think he's calling in, so I think it's a little trickier.
Yep, I think
Rich, you're muted.
Yep, you'll have to unmute on your end if you're on a phone. And maybe let us know what phone number you're calling in on in case we've somehow done that.
Is it *6?
Well, until he jumps on, I can give an update for the Klamath. We just had one come through for Pacificor, and I didn't see Damian Ebert on the phone. As you all know, the EPA lab in Richmond is shut down right now. So what we have that we're doing is we're doing phytoplankton samples. We're doing speciation for toxigenic species only, and we're doing rushes on that. So we get them from Jim Sweet from Aquatic Analysts, and they come back in just a couple days. It works pretty well, but we're out of funding for that after next week. But we don't have anything. I think there's a little maybe oscillatoria or something up in the reservoirs, but we're not seeing our blooms come in yet. We've had some kind of unseasonably cool weather, which is really nice for things like blooms and for fish health. So once it heats up, I would imagine those blooms are coming. That's all we have for now.
Hey, Susan, I noticed from the Upper Klamath Lake, looks like from the satellite that there's something going on. You have anything to?
Yeah, I looked at an update of it last week, but, oh, Rich, you're on. Go ahead.
Well, you can speak better to the Klamath than I can, but my understanding from Damian is that they were starting to see some stuff up in Upper Klamath Lake, but it hadn't gotten as far down as Copco and Iron Gate at this point in time.
Right, well, and their stuff doesn't really, their blooms are not what affect our blooms. Our blooms are totally on their own from Upper Klamath Lake, so that's a good distinguishing characteristic there. That's why I'm not always keep up on Upper Klamath Lake. So yes, Upper Klamath Lake blooms every year, and it looks like last week when I looked at their update, they were about at like a medium level for the bloom situation. They normally have AFA come on first, and then they have a microcystis bloom follow after that, and they normally do that for 2 cycles throughout the summer, and it looks like they're just getting started up there as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and as far as the rest of the region, we don't have anything active at the moment. We were just out. There was I was just out on Salmon Creek in the lagoon there, and there's a lot of benthic cyanobacteria and everything else, but testing proved it to be negative at this point in time. Other than that, I've been speaking to folks on the Russian River who stated that it's just sort of starting to develop now, a little bit on the margin, but really that everything's sort of holding off at the moment. So that's good news all over.
Thank you. Region 2.
Good morning. This is Carrie Austin, and I know that Hal McLean is also on the phone. So I'm Carrie Austin with the Water Board, and we have a lot of red dots. I like that you've drilled in there on the desktop, Dave, because then I see that north of us in Region 1, it looks like they have as many, but when you pull the map out, it looks like there's quite a cluster in the San Francisco Bay Area, and yet, you know, we have pretty small water bodies here except for the bay. So we're very fortunate. Those dots are almost all East Bay Regional Park District, and they are out there protecting the park users, especially their dogs. So the parks are overwhelmed with users right now. I have been riding my bicycle rather than hiking these days because the hiking trails are so crowded, and I pedal by lakes and I see typically the dads with their fishing tackle and the children in tow, and lots of use of our East Bay Regional Parks. And I am so grateful to you guys for continuing to monitor And as you can see, we have 3 dangers and 3 warnings up there, it looks like, or I guess they're cautions. So I wanted to start with, yeah, we seem to have quite a problem here, and we're advising people with the signs, but also East Bay Regional Park District is taking some action to mitigate in lake. So I don't know, Hal, are you there? Did you want to speak up about your monitoring as well as the mitigation?
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, everybody's different, and you know, during this pandemic, things are not opening. Our parks are not completely open. We do not have swimming at our reservoirs. We do allow fishing, but then a lot of our reservoirs, they don't have parking open either, so it makes access a little crazier. But even if we are closed to swimming, that doesn't mean that there aren't lots of people jumping fences or hiking in or having big swim parties at our lakes. And we do have our public safety run them out, but it is kind of crazy. Right now, we do have 3 dangers, which we don't quite use your guys' system. We just go from caution to danger. And so your warning signs are our danger signs. And we have a danger at Quarry Lakes in Fremont, and a danger at Lake Temescal in Oakland. And then and Big Break is a spot way out in the Delta there, and we have a danger there as well. We don't, that's not a swimming area, but it is an access area where we tend to have programs with naturalists. We are not having programs with naturalists at this time. We do have cautions at Lake Anza, Lake Del Val in Livermore, and Lake Chabot in Castro Valley. Lake Chabot is not a swimming lake. And something has come up about our Big Break and Lake Chabot sites. We're kind of going over our policy on when we have a danger and when we have cyanobacteria toxins above 20, we are allowing kayaking and paddle boating and canoeing, and we are kind of going back over that and discussing the risks of that. And if anybody has any information about the different risks of kayaking, paddle boating, and canoeing, that'd be great to share with me, and we can incorporate it into our management. We also have Shadow Cliffs Lake in Pleasanton, and that is not open, although apparently people are swimming there. And we don't see cyanobacteria there, but there's a levee between it and a creek area. It's Arroyo del Val, and that's a very popular dog area, and we do see cyanobacteria there, and that is posted at a caution as well. So that's kind of interesting. We are working on some hypoliminetic oxygenation systems. We have one at Lake Anza that's going to use, we're going to pump oxygen into it, and it is almost done, but the folks that are going to install it are out in Tennessee. And ever since the COVID pandemic hit, it got put on hold. Now they can't get out here, and we can't get the system put in. So it's kind of a pain. We were going to do an alum treatment in Lake Temescal, and then we were approached by some folks that can do a nanobubbler pilot. And apparently with nanobubblers, they don't have a lot of information on how they work, or they don't have a lot of data on it. And so we are foregoing our alum treatment to put in this nanobubbler system, and we're going to have live data to monitor how this nanobubbler is going to hopefully switch over this our Lake Temescal and add some oxygen into the sediments. They do have a system that we got to check out on Bolinas in Marin County, and it's pretty impressive. And since then, I've seen that there's been a number of nanobubbler webinars, and it sounds like it's really kind of taking off, which is pretty interesting. But then that's about it, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, any questions before we move on? Okay, Region 3, do we have somebody on the line from Region 3?
Yeah, hi, this is Melissa Doherty, Region 3. We haven't been actively sampling for CyanobHABs this season based on our kind of shelter-in-place directives and for our field team, but we have been in communication with some of our lake managers and recently partnered with some new entities in San Luis Obispo County at Public Works that are providing some of their results from the monitoring they do for some of our reservoirs, drinking water reservoirs. So that's been a new development this season, which is great. And there were some agencies in our area that also were able to get some of those more permanent signs. So thank you again for providing those for our lake managers and water body managers. So those have been useful. We have been seeing some activity on the satellites. Currently, we don't have anything above the index score, but we are in communication with those entities when we do receive the satellite notice and share that information with them. So that's all I have to report right now.
Great, thank you. Region 4?
Hi, this is Emily Duncan with Region 4. I have not been out actively sampling, but I do know that Brianne Sakata with DWR has been emailing regular updates with water bodies in our region, and so there is a warning in place at Pyramid Lake. And that's the only one that I know of for Region 4 at the moment.
Okay, Region 5?
Hi, this is Jennifer LeBay. So a couple updates. First, for those of you not aware, Christine Job has taken a position with Fish and Wildlife, so she's on today, but she's representing Fish and Wildlife. And so in Region 5, our new regional HAB coordinator is Matt Krause. He's not on today, but he works in the swamp program and has been working with Marissa and Keith quite a bit on pretty regular reports that have been coming in this season. We did have some danger reports that came in for Discovery Bay. That's been one of our big ones that's been popping up, which is pretty typical. So we've been getting information out to the homeowners and the appropriate water body managers on those. And then Clear Lake has also had some danger going on, which you heard from Sarah and Corolla on that earlier. A couple updates in regards to activities that we're going to be getting going. So in Clear Lake, we have a new study starting up, looking at environmental drivers for HABs, and actually Dave and Jayme are spearheading that for us. So that's going to get going later this summer. And then we're also going to be moving forward with mesocosm study in Discovery Bay with Dave. Dave, I don't know if we have a date for that yet, do we?
Mid-August.
mid-August.
COVID willing.
Yeah. So those are some things that are happening in our region.
Okay, Region 6.
This is Keith again, and I'll be providing the Region 6 update because Mary Fiore-Wagner was not able to attend, so she sent me an email.
You were the go-to guy today.
I know, exactly. It's all good. Yeah, so they have 2 special studies. One is at Red Lake in Alpine County, which involves monthly sampling partnership with the nonprofit Alpine Watershed Group. And so they've begun their monthly sampling, and this is a continuation from, this is year 2 of that project. So great to see Region 6 engaging with NGOs and sharing data, sharing resources. Yeah, and the map is getting updated with each month with those data. The other special study is in the Tahoe Keys Lagoon, where a laminar flow aeration system was put in to help reduce algal growth. And so they are collecting water quality samples there and toxin data. And currently, both Red Lake and the Tahoe Keys Lagoon, the most recent sampling from earlier in June showed a low abundance of Delicospermum, but no toxin-producing genes in either of those sites. So nothing really cranking yet in those places. The regional board and state board have been working with San Bernardino County Parks and Recreation regarding enhancing and improving their HAB monitoring at various surface waters that are frequently experiencing blooms, such as Lake Gregory, as well as Mojave Narrows Regional Park. And they're also working with South Tahoe Public Utility District regarding sampling at Indian Creek Reservoir, where there's currently a caution level posted there. And samples were collected on June 30th, and results are still pending. And so that's also another cool sort of inter-entity collaboration happening in Region 6. Region 6 worked with OEHA and State Board and CDFW to create a general awareness newsletter and press release that was distributed by CDFW to the fishing community. So it was timed to sort of track the sort of start of, not actually angling season, but in the summer, as CDFW is ramping up the stocking of lakes. One of their staff members was kind of concerned with stocking lakes that are experiencing HABs and blooms, and so we had some really productive conversations with them, and they were open to issuing a press release targeted at anglers about HABs. So that was a really great collaborative effort. And then Department of Water Resources continues to sample Silverwood Lake and post advisories as needed down there as well. And so those were the updates from Mary Fiore-Wagner. And if anybody else has any questions or comments, I may be able to answer them, as we were involved with some of these updates.
Any questions? Then we'll move on to Region 7. Do we have somebody on the line from 7?
I think the last I heard from Jeff, they had planned to do monitoring at Imperial Wildlife Area, and we're waiting to hear back from CDFW on which ponds they were going to leave wetted for this season. So that's the last update I had from him, I think last month. I don't know, Keith, do you have anything from Jeff either?
No, I haven't gotten a recent update from him.
Okay, then let's move on to Region 8. Do we have someone from Region 8?
Yeah, this is Barbara Berry. Am I coming in clear?
Yes.
Okay. So we've been focusing efforts on Lake Elsinore lately. There's been a sustained bloom there for it seems like a couple months now. We took samples on June 9th and also June 29th. Caution signs are posted around the lake. There's definitely a microcystis bloom. But toxin levels are still somewhat low. We did find anatoxin at one of the beaches at Parrot Park. And we're going to be talking to the Lake Elsinore, to City Lake Elsinore, to discuss how they communicate our results to the public. I'm a little concerned that there might be sign fatigue. They post 27 signs around the lake, but those signs are kind of lost amongst other warning signs. And we spoke to a few people at the lake the last time we were down there, and most people had no idea that there were signs posted or who to contact for further information. And even people that worked there weren't really aware. So we're a little concerned about that. There's also appears to be a bloom growing at Big Bear Lake. We're going to be sampling up there later this month. We also went out to Lake Hemet, where we haven't really sampled before. There seems to be a microcystis bloom there as well. And at Prado Regional Park, there's a lake there that I was recently notified that there's a bloom there. We're going to be sampling later on. The regional parks, San Bernardino Regional Parks, took samples and they're at danger levels. And we're going to be sampling at another regional park next week. San Bernardino has several smaller regional parks that they stock fish at, and they're open to the public. And I think that's all I had.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Region 9.
Hi, yeah, this is Carrie from Region 9. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just a few updates. Let's see, earlier in the season, we definitely got quite a few reports for the red tide, which obviously wasn't cyanobacteria, and then a few for green algae. So it's a good thing that people are using the bloom report tool. So that's the main reason why I mentioned that. The main bloom, I guess, that we've been dealing with is at Lake Henshaw. It showed up in the satellite. Since May, we've been getting alerts, and I've been working with Vista Irrigation District down there. And thankfully, they've been, in the past, they really weren't as willing to share information, but we've been working really well with them now. So we had an interesting thing happen. In June 1st, they did some sampling where the shoreline was really high with microcystin. It was about 30 micrograms per liter, but the rest of the lake, they sampled at a dock, pretty much the center of the lake, and then the outflow were all well below the caution level. So we had a nice discussion with them about what to do for the signage. And they actually had their own durable signs made. So we weren't able to change any of the wording, but we ended up agreeing on using at least the warning signs, since the wording seemed a bit more cautious to keep the kids and the dogs out of the water, but still allowed for the boating and fishing. There's no swimming in that lake. And at that time, there was a lot of microcystis and aphanizomenon. Sampled again June 15th, and we're seeing more of a shift to the Delicospermum, and the levels are all more in the warning throughout the lake. So they're keeping those signs up, and I know the next sampling is supposed to happen. Actually, it happened yesterday. So we'll see where we are once we get that information.
Great, thank you. So any other updates or questions related to the Regional HAB Coordinator updates? It sounds like things are starting to cook. And in addition to COVID, we're now going to be in cyano season.
Hey, Dave, this is Becky Stanton. I can give an update from the HAB-related illness work group.
Please.
Okay, so far this season, we've had a total of 16 potential illness or potentially related illness reports come in. That's been 4 dogs, 5 fish kills, 6 human cases, and 1 wildlife, and no livestock. And those have all been since our March 2020, our last CCWRP meeting. And so we'll follow up on all of those. Also to reiterate, as Marisha mentioned, we've gotten the the new consolidated webpage for the work we do on this. And that again has the 2018, 2019 summaries and the map by county. And then also, as Marissa pointed out, really want to highlight CDPH's now has the physician guide. And so we've had the existing veterinarian guide, but we've haven't had something more specific for physicians. So we're really excited that CDPH developed that, and we now have that on the HAB portal as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Anything else on the region reports? Questions or comments?
I had a question for Becky on the illness reports. This is Sarah Ryan over at Big Valley. So the fish kills, how are you identifying them in terms of cyanotoxin or cyanobacteria blooms? Are they, it's just fish kills that are happening during that, or is there actual testing for toxin levels in the tissue, or how are you relating them?
The bar is pretty low for fish kills in terms of what we think, and we do incorporate indirect effects of low oxygen. So in general, if we have an extensive bloom and likely death from dissolved oxygen, we'll consider that related. We do not usually have the capacity to test for fish tissue. And so it's often, you know, what we have from the water, you know, if we have cyanobacteria or toxins in the water, as well as, you know, a coincidental kill, but we don't try to get all the way to like confirmed for those.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. So in the indirect effects is the main thing you're logging with fish kills then?
Well, we don't log them separately, but we do incorporate both. So we don't try to distinguish, you know, was it toxin in the water or was it DO for that? Because we don't often have it. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none, I think we'll move on to the subcommittee updates. I know we have at least one, so please, subcommittee chairs, identify yourself and unmute and provide a little update.
Hi, this is Carrie. I could speak to mitigation.
Please.
Great. Okay, so the mitigation subcommittee met quarterly, in the last quarter, we met monthly. So that's very typical, but as the summer bloom season heats up and people in past years found themselves in the field a lot, we go in the summer to taking a break from meetings and instead communicate via email as needed. Excuse me. We did have a presentation. We had an outside speaker at our May meeting, which is very interesting. It was on Lake Chabot, and the presentation was by staff of the East Bay Municipal Utility District. So that's the water district. Dave, if you've got the map there, do you want to click on Lake Chabot so people can see where it is? It's in the hills on the east side, so overlooking San Francisco Bay. It's really a lovely recreation site. Lots of different activities that East Bay Regional Park District oversees. Lots of mountain bike riding and hiking, on the water activities, no immersion swimming, but certainly there used to be pedal boats. I remember doing that years ago and so forth. It was a very interesting presentation because this was one of the first cyanotoxin events in the Bay region. And I'm sorry to say it was dog deaths that drew our attention to this. And so the presentation was from the water district's point of view of their they have this reservoir. It's basically a spare tire, meaning that the water is available for fire suppression or severe drought, but it's not currently plumbed into the drinking water supply. And what was interesting was, Water District is very informed and skilled about algae blooms and detecting them and so forth from the drinking water perspective. So after a year of sampling and so forth, they turn it over to their recreation partners. So I know Hal's on the line. And so the really cool thing about this presentation was that even Hal said he learned a few new things about Lake Chabot in terms of certain plumbing of it and so forth. So yeah, the mitigation committee has continued to meet, and we think about our website, and we're willing to take input. And that's my quick rundown of our subcommittee. Any questions?
Questions of Carrie? The mitigation subcommittee has been pretty active. So it's hats off to Carrie for the job she's done.
Well, that's kind of you, but actually, Becky, do you want to make a plug for the ITRC by any chance?
I did that earlier, so.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
No worries.
This is Keith. I had a question for you. Carrie, with your guys' preliminary lake evaluation, are you still looking for potential candidates for that? I know we will, now with summer happening, we're often kind of getting reports in from varying, capacities of, individuals living in small ponds or connected to larger water bodies. Is it helpful for us to notify you if we have interest from reporting parties kind of looking for next steps or looking for more data? Is that preliminary lake evaluation a good place to kind of turn them towards?
Yeah, so just please keep in mind that we're really looking for the very novice lake managers, not places that have a fair amount of information on them, but quite the opposite. We want lakes where people have not actively managed them in the past, and there isn't a lot of data. We're really at the novice end is what we're trying to address. So yes, Keith, and I share that with Bill Taylor. I think he was earlier on, can't tell right now if he's on. So yes, we have a great volunteer for that.
He is on. And Bill, if you want to say a few words about the preliminary lake evaluation, that'd be great.
Hi. Yeah, we are still looking for case studies. Actually, we're still testing it out to see how useful it is. And we have one lake, Willow Lake, that's had a report put out, and it's under the review process. And hopefully that one can be posted at some point. And we're still interested in Red Lake, but we're waiting for, because it was a special case. And we will still follow up on that. But yeah, if there are lakes that you think might fit, let us know, and we'll take a look at it and see if we want to make that effort for those.
Okay, thanks.
So Carrie, did you want to say anything about your efforts to try to uncover some funding for the preliminary lake evaluation, as well as for the action squad?
Yeah, the action squad, the Bloom response team. Yes. So Bill Taylor and Dave Karen and I went and met with people at the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. So we went to mid-high level manager to talk about, do they have bloom problems? Is there some kind of a nexus there for funding for a bloom response team? So last July, we brought this to the FHAB network as the strike force, but we've given it a more polished professional name of Bloom Response Team. And it's going to be a long haul to find funding. We know it. but yeah, there's, if you know me by now, you know I have persistence, so we'll work on this.
Okay, other subcommittee leads that would like to weigh in?
This is Keith again. I sort of reinvigorated the benthic HAB subcommittee last winter, and we generated those signs. So I just wanted to let everybody know that those signs all went live after the last meeting. So we appreciate everybody's feedback on that. And with the portal updates that Marissa and Becky worked on, we have new toxic algal mat web pages and guidance, and it's been in responding to blooms, we've had a number of situations already where those have been where the cyanotoxins and the cyanobacteria are being produced in mats. So it's been great to finally have this type of a resource. One of them was even connected to an illness case. So if any of you, want more information or guidance or follow up, if you think that algal mats is more of the issue in your water body, let me know, and I can kind of help provide additional context or guidance. Yeah, and if you have any other feedback or experience from the public or others in terms of the messaging or recommended ways we could make things clearer, we're very open to that too. But so please remember that resource is now fully available if you ever come into an issue this summer with toxic algal mats.
On that note, Keith, this is Marissa. I could share my screen again and walk folks through where they can find more of the information just in case they missed the announcements. Dave, would that be helpful?
Yep, absolutely. I just gave you the power.
Thank you. All right, so I'm sharing my screen again. This is the HAB portal landing page. So I'll walk you through, if you're curious first on learning a little bit more about what Keith had described about the benthic cyanobacteria, you want to go to the FAQs for the toxic algal mats. This is more the resources for public page. And there's some quick questions listed here that can walk you through it. So what are toxic algal mats? A description about the toxins that are found in these mats, how they look like, how to stay safe around toxic algal mats. So basically healthy water habits are recommended. And then we can click on here to go to the algal mat advisory signs to take a look at how they look like. There's 2 different signs that were developed as part of that committee. And then if you'd like to learn about how to apply these to your water bodies, so you want to provide some response to a potential toxic algal mat situation, you can go to the guidelines webpage. And this is designed more for the responding agencies. So there's some quick links to more information about what the advisories are, a link to the general awareness sign, then the trigger level sign, and where to download the signs in different formats. So I'm just going to scroll through this. This information shows you a little bit more information about what we're actually recommending in those advisories. And step-by-step instructions on how to use the general awareness sign versus the trigger level sign, which is equivalent to the yellow or caution advisory for planktonic blooms. There's also a process for posting, a flowchart here, and also a narrative about that posting as well. So there's quite a bit of information here to provide you with more details on how to utilize them. And then you can download these signs. They're both in English and Spanish. All right, I'll stop
Hey,
there.
Marissa or Keith, this is Becky. Is there a potential for also having some of those signs printed and available in the future, or is?
Yeah, good question. So as part of the durable signs process, that announcement that went through and the distribution of the durable signs, those were for the planktonic signs, let's say the original CCHAB signs that were developed, and then the general awareness sign. At that time, we didn't have these benthic signs produced yet. But Keith and I have been looking into some other methods for getting them printed, perhaps small paper just laminated so they wouldn't be durable signs. And we're still looking into if we can do that and distribute them to folks, but they wouldn't be durable signs for multiple seasons. And if you're interested in that, please contact us. Here's a contact just general inbox. Or we've also distributed Keith's email several times in the chat window.
Are there questions or comments? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, one more. We are also invited to speak to the Center of Disease Control has a monthly HABs call, and so we'll be in a couple weeks. I'll be presenting more information about the mats to that group too. So we're excited to be able to share this with other states as well, and hear kind of hear their feedback. So we'll have more reports at the next CCHAB meeting on how that call went.
That's great. Anything else? Questions or comments? Any other subcommittee leads on the line who might want to share something? Okay, hearing no response to that, we may get out of here a little bit early. I think we'll open it up now to anyone who would like to make a comment, ask a question, either about the topics we've heard about today or other things. Please don't be shy, just unmute. Anybody? Everybody burned out after a few hours? Understandable.
I would just say we're, for as far as our next CCHAB meeting, I don't think we have a date, but we'd be interested for if there's any particular conflicts or scheduling issues for our fall meeting.
Great. And Sarah or Becky, do you have anything else to add?
You know, I'm really glad to hear such detailed descriptions from the regional HAB coordinators of their water bodies, and I think it was a good tool to use the mapping so that we could kind of look as we're talking. I always appreciate it when I hear toxin levels. I think that's helpful for all of us in the group. And I think there's a lot of detail in this meeting. Thank you very much for that. I think the fall meeting could potentially be a longer meeting. I think we discussed that. So if there are presenters or if the participants today know of a good topic or presentation that they'd like to see at the next meeting, please let us co-chairs know. Thank you.
Dave, could I chime in with one more comment?
Absolutely.
Sorry, and I apologize. I should have probably front-loaded this. Marissa and I also created a weekly HABs notification, which some of you may have seen going out on the CCHAB Lyris list. And so what we're doing is we're taking our database and we're querying it each week for all the reports that were updated in the last 7 days. And then that's getting generated as a PDF report that then is going out. So our hope is to sort of make that an easily digestible resource for people to see where things are changing and where information has been recently updated. We are currently piloting this on the CCHAB Lyris listserv, but plan are also in conversation about maybe moving it to its own dedicated listserv. And so some of you, that it's going out either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, with the hope that then that enables people time on Friday to do any follow-up they may want to do with other entities or a media release prior to the weekend recreation by people. And so far have gotten a good response. I've gotten several follow-up emails as a result of these reports. So I think it seems to be serving one of its jobs, which was to try and increase awareness of where conditions are changing and then kind of putting blooms a little more front and center in people's inboxes rather than kind of relying on people to come and check the map in a more passive way. So any questions or thoughts or comments on that report can get directed to me as well. And And yes, that's another update from the OEMA office.
Great, thank you. Any other announcements or comments or questions from anybody? Okay.
Hey, Dave, this is Sarah.
Yeah.
I see a question that I missed in the group chat. It looks like it was part of the Region 1 presentation with Rich, and I know Susan presented as well, but it's what part of Russian River was just given in an update. I believe that that Rich gave that presentation.
Rich, are you still on?
I am. I'm sorry. Can you please repeat that, Sarah?
Yes, it was.
Can you hear me?
Which part of the Russian River were you talking about during your presentation? I guess with the toxin levels or the sampling, I'm not sure.
The Salmon Creek watershed, where we have a lot of benthic, there's a lagoon there. The mouth of the river, or the creek, I should say, is closed off, and has an extensive amount of benthic cyanobacteria. It's like I said, it's a lagoonish, and it's just north of Bodega Bay, so it's not actually part of the Russian River. However, we have the Sonoma County Water Agency works extensively in the Russian River, and they're in communication with them. They've told us that very little cyanobacteria has started to grow at this point in time, and so the river's actually running rather clean in that respect.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, last chance, anyone? Okay, silence is consent. So I'm going to get you all off to lunch on time, I guess. Thank you all for attending, and we'll be in touch for the next quarterly meeting, obviously. And a lot of good information today. Don't feel like you can't reach out to the speakers. Please do. And we have recorded this, and we'll get that posted and get minutes posted as soon as we can. So thank you all for attending. Sarah, Becky, do you want to say any final words?
Thanks for leading and facilitating, Dave. Appreciate it.
Good job, Dave.
Yeah, I'm going to write to Zoom, tell them I want a job. Okay, all. Then I think we'll sign off. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Marissa, if you're still on, thank you for the help with the roll call. That is always chaos, and it's even worse, I think, on a platform like Zoom.